Sarah Chen had been planning this weekend getaway for months. After a brutal year of 12-hour workdays and endless stress, she desperately needed time away from the city's constant noise and pressure. When she found the listing for Cedar Ridge Cabin, nestled deep in the mountains of North Carolina, it seemed like the perfect escape. The photo showed a charming log cabin surrounded by towering pines, with a stone fireplace and rustic charm that promised the peace she craved. Her husband Mike had been hesitant at first. He preferred hotels with their predictable comfort and room service, but Sarah's enthusiasm eventually won him over. Their 8-year-old daughter Emma was thrilled about the adventure, chattering excitedly about hiking trails and roasting marshmallows by the fire. As they packed their bags that Friday morning, the family felt the familiar flutter of anticipation that comes with breaking routine and stepping into something new. The drive up the winding mountain road took longer than expected. Cell phone towers became scarce, and GPS signals flickered in and out as they climbed higher into the wilderness. The autumn air grew crisp and thin, carrying the rich scent of decaying leaves and pine needles. When they finally pulled into the gravel driveway, the cabin looked exactly like the photos, perhaps even more inviting in person, with smoke curling from the chimney and warm light spilling from the windows. The host, David Matthews, was waiting for them on the front porch. He appeared to be in his 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His smile seemed genuine as he welcomed them, his voice warm and friendly as he explained the cabin's features. He showed them how to work the wood-burning stove, pointed out the hiking trails marked on a hand-drawn map, and mentioned that the nearest neighbors were miles away. "You'll have complete privacy here," he said with what seemed like pride. "No one will bother you at all." As David handed over the keys, Sarah noticed his hands were unusually soft for someone who claimed to maintain mountain properties. His fingernails were perfectly clean, almost manicured. When Emma asked about Wi-Fi, David's smile flickered for just a moment before he explained that the internet was spotty but functional. "Sometimes it cuts out completely," he said, "but that's part of the charm, right? A real digital detox." After David left, the family began settling in. The cabin was everything they had hoped for and more. The living room featured a massive stone fireplace with comfortable leather furniture arranged around it. The kitchen was fully equipped with modern appliances that seemed oddly new compared to the rustic exterior. Emma immediately claimed the loft bedroom, accessible by a steep wooden ladder, while Sarah and Mike took the master bedroom on the main floor. That first evening passed peacefully. They grilled burgers on the deck while watching the sunset behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Emma collected pine cones and interesting rocks, her excitement infectious as she planned elaborate nature crafts. Mike finally seemed to relax, his shoulders losing their perpetual tension as he sipped a beer and watched his daughter play. Sarah felt a deep contentment she hadn't experienced in months, the kind of bone-deep relaxation that only comes from being far from the demands of everyday life. As night fell, the silence was profound. No traffic, no sirens, no neighbor's television bleeding through thin walls. Just the gentle whisper of wind through pine needles and the distant call of an owl. They built a fire and roasted marshmallows, Emma's delighted giggles echoing off the wooden walls as she tried to perfect her S. Mori's technique. When they finally tucked her into the loft bed, she was already half asleep, exhausted from the fresh air and excitement. Sarah and Mike retreated to their bedroom, where they made love for the first time in weeks, their connection rekindled by the romantic setting and absence of stress. Afterward, they lay entwined, listening to the absolute quiet of the mountains. "We should do this more often," Sarah murmured against Mike's chest. "Just escape from everything." He kissed the top of her head and agreed, already planning their next getaway. The first sign that something was wrong came Saturday morning. Sarah woke early, as was her habit, and padded to the kitchen to make coffee. She was certain she had left the bag of coffee beans on the counter the night before, but now it sat in a different position, rotated slightly and moved about 6 inches to the left. The cream, which she distinctly remembered placing in the refrigerator door, was now on the main shelf. Small things, easily dismissed as the confusion of being in an unfamiliar place. Mike found her standing in the kitchen, staring at the coffee setup with a puzzled expression. "Everything okay?" he asked, wrapping his arms around her waist from behind. Sarah leaned into his warmth, breathing in his familiar scent mixed with the clean mountain air. "I thought I put things differently last night," she said, then shook her head. "I'm probably just tired. Different place, different routine." They spent Saturday hiking the trails David had recommended, Emma bounding ahead like a young deer while Sarah and Mike followed at a more leisurely pace. The woods were spectacular, with towering trees that seemed to touch the sky and a creek that bubbled over smooth stones. They packed a picnic lunch and ate it on a rocky outcrop that offered a panoramic view of the valley below. For hours, they forgot about everything except the simple pleasure of being together in such natural beauty. That evening, as they prepared dinner, Sarah noticed another small oddity. The refrigerator door, which she had definitely closed completely, was slightly ajar. Not enough to trigger the alarm or cause any real problem, but enough to suggest someone had opened it. When she mentioned it to Mike, he suggested that the door might not seal properly due to the cabin's age or perhaps the uneven floors common in mountain properties. The second night, Sarah woke around 3 in the morning with an inexplicable sense of unease. The bedroom was dark except for a sliver of moonlight filtering through the curtains. She lay still, listening intently, but heard nothing unusual. Yet the feeling persisted, a primitive awareness that made her skin prickle with goosebumps. She felt exposed, vulnerable, as if unseen eyes were watching her sleep. She woke Mike, whispering her concerns, but he was groggy and dismissive. "It's just a new environment," he murmured, pulling her closer. "Old cabins make weird noises." But Sarah couldn't shake the feeling. She rose quietly and checked on Emma, who was sleeping peacefully in the loft, her breathing deep and even. Standing at the bottom of the ladder, Sarah scanned the living room carefully. Everything appeared normal, but something felt wrong. The shadows seemed deeper, more menacing. The silence, which had been so soothing the night before, now felt oppressive and watchful. Sunday morning brought more subtle disturbances. Emma's stuffed rabbit, which she always positioned sitting upright against her pillow, was lying on its side. Sarah's shampoo bottle in the bathroom had been moved from the left side of the tub to the right. Mike's reading glasses, which he always folded and placed on the nightstand, were found unfolded and positioned differently. Each incident was small, easily explained away by forgetfulness or the natural settling of objects in an unfamiliar space. But Sarah's unease was growing. She found herself checking locks multiple times, something she had never done before. She examined windows for signs of tampering and looked closely at doors to see if they showed any evidence of being opened. Everything appeared secure, but the feeling of being watched intensified throughout the day. Even during their final hike, she found herself glancing over her shoulder, convinced that someone was following them through the trees. Mike was beginning to worry about his wife's state of mind. Sarah had always been the practical one, the voice of reason who kept their family grounded. Seeing her jump at every sound and constantly look over her shoulder was completely out of character. He wondered if the stress of the past year had finally caught up with her, manifesting in paranoid thoughts and irrational fears. When she suggested they pack up and leave a day early, he initially resisted, not wanting to cut short their much-needed vacation. The breaking point came Sunday evening. Sarah was in the bathroom, brushing her teeth before bed, when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. On the wall beside the mirror, about 7 feet up near the ceiling, was a tiny hole she hadn't seen before. It was perfectly round, about the size of a pencil eraser, and seemed to have been drilled very precisely. The wood around the edge was slightly lighter than the surrounding wall, suggesting recent work. Her heart pounding, Sarah called Mike into the bathroom. Together, they examined the hole, shining a flashlight into it. The beam revealed a small cavity that seemed to extend several inches into the wall. Mike's skepticism evaporated as he realized the hole was too perfect, too deliberate to be natural. "What do you think it is?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Mike's face had gone pale. As someone who worked in IT security, he knew exactly what that hole could be hiding. "We need to check the whole cabin," he said grimly. "Right now." They began a systematic search, moving methodically from room to room. In the master bedroom, they found 2 more holes, one in the wall above the bed, another in the corner near the ceiling. The living room revealed 3 more, positioned to provide different angles of the main gathering space. The kitchen had one, perfectly placed to monitor the area where they prepared and ate their meals. Most disturbing of all, Emma's loft bedroom had a hole drilled directly above where her bed was positioned. The holes were so small and placed so high that they would be virtually invisible during normal use of the cabin. Only someone specifically looking for them, with the right lighting and angle, would ever notice them. The precision of their placement suggested careful planning and extensive knowledge of the cabin's layout and typical furniture arrangements. Sarah felt sick to her stomach as the implications sank in. Someone had been watching them sleep, watching them eat, watching their most private moments. The feeling of being observed that had plagued her for days hadn't been paranoia, it had been accurate intuition. Her body had sensed what her mind hadn't yet understood. Mike was already moving into action, his professional training kicking in. "We need to find the source," he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "These holes don't mean anything without cameras, and cameras need power and transmission." He began tracing the walls, looking for any sign of wiring or equipment. In the utility closet, behind the water heater, they found it. A sophisticated wireless system with multiple small cameras, each no bigger than a button, connected to a central hub that could transmit signals over long distances. The equipment was professional grade, expensive, and designed for covert surveillance. Red LED lights indicated that the system was actively recording. Sarah's hands shook as she photographed the equipment with her phone. The reality of their violation was overwhelming. For 3 days, someone had been watching their every move, recording their conversations, their intimate moments, their daughter's sleep. The invasion felt deeper than theft or vandalism. It was a violation of their most basic sense of safety and privacy. Mike found a laptop hidden behind a false panel in the same closet. When he opened it, the screen showed a live feed divided into multiple windows, each showing a different angle of the cabin. They could see themselves standing in the utility closet, their faces pale and shocked in the green glow of night vision cameras. The timestamp showed that the recording had been running continuously since their arrival. The laptop's hard drive contained thousands of hours of footage from previous guests. Families eating breakfast, couples sharing intimate moments, children playing, people sleeping, showering, changing clothes. The files were meticulously organized by date and guest name, creating a vast archive of unknowing victims. Sarah saw her own family's name on dozens of files, their 3 days of privacy transformed into someone else's entertainment. Mike's investigation of the laptop revealed the true scope of the operation. The system was remotely accessible, meaning David had described them as perfect subjects and had arranged for extended monitoring because Emma was especially marketable. The casual, businesslike tone of the messages made the violation feel even more dehumanizing. They weren't people to these criminals, they were products to be exploited and sold. The family immediately contacted the police, but the remote location meant it would be hours before officers could arrive. Mike made the decision to preserve all evidence while removing his family from immediate danger. They packed frantically, Emma confused and frightened by her parents' urgent whispers and pale faces. Sarah tried to explain that they needed to leave without going into detail about what they had discovered, not wanting to traumatize their daughter further. As they loaded their car, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were still being watched. The darkness beyond the cabin's lights seemed to press in around them, and every shadow could be hiding another camera or observer. The woods that had seemed so peaceful and welcoming now felt menacing and full of unseen threats. Even the familiar sounds of night creatures seemed ominous, as if the entire forest was complicit in their violation. The drive down the mountain was tense and silent. Mike kept checking his rearview mirror, worried that they might be followed. Sarah held Emma close, her daughter finally asleep after the stress and confusion of their sudden departure. The winding roads that had seemed so scenic on their arrival now felt like a trap, with countless places where someone could be watching or waiting. When police finally arrived at the cabin, they found that the surveillance equipment had been remotely wiped clean. However, Mike's quick thinking in photographing and copying files before they left provided crucial evidence. The investigation that followed revealed a network of at least 15 properties across 3 states, all equipped with similar surveillance systems and operated by a group of property owners who had been running the scheme for over 5 years. David Matthews was arrested at his home, where police found extensive computer equipment and thousands of additional hours of footage. His personal collection included recordings from dozens of properties and hundreds of unsuspecting guests. The investigation revealed that he had been using multiple identities to list properties on various vacation rental platforms, always choosing remote locations where guests would be unlikely to discover the surveillance equipment. The other members of the network were traced through digital evidence and communication logs. Many were seemingly respectable property owners who had been using their rental businesses as fronts for voyeurism and illegal content creation. The scope of the operation was staggering. Investigators estimated that thousands of guests had been recorded over the years, with the footage being sold to buyers around the world. For Sarah, Mike, and Emma, the aftermath was almost as traumatic as the discovery itself. They struggled with feelings of violation and betrayal that extended far beyond their experience at the cabin. The knowledge that intimate moments from their vacation had been viewed by strangers felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. Emma, despite being shielded from the worst details, developed anxiety about sleeping in new places and would often wake her parents with nightmares about being watched. The legal proceedings were lengthy and complex, involving multiple jurisdictions and international law enforcement agencies. The case became a landmark in privacy law and led to new regulations requiring vacation rental platforms to implement better verification and monitoring systems. Sarah testified about the psychological impact of the violation, her voice steady but her hands shaking as she described the feeling of being watched and the betrayal of discovering their trust had been so thoroughly violated. The experience changed their family forever. What should have been a cherished memory of family bonding became a trauma that required months of therapy to process. Sarah found herself unable to stay in any rental property without conducting extensive searches for hidden cameras. Mike became hypervigilant about online privacy and security, changing passwords and reviewing privacy settings obsessively. Emma's innocence was permanently altered by the knowledge that adults could be deceptive and dangerous in ways she had never imagined. The cabin where they had been violated was eventually demolished, but the psychological damage remained. Sarah would sometimes wake in the middle of the night with the same feeling of being watched that had plagued her during those 3 days in the mountains. The violation had created a permanent crack in their sense of safety and privacy, a reminder that the world contained dangers they had never imagined and that trust, once broken, could never be fully restored. The network's victims numbered in the thousands, each family and individual carrying their own trauma from the experience. Support groups formed online, connecting people who had shared the unique violation of being unknowingly recorded in their most private moments. The bonds formed through this shared experience became a source of healing for many, proof that even the worst violations of trust could be overcome through community and mutual support. David Matthews was sentenced to 15 years in prison, along with his co-conspirators. The judge noted that their crimes represented not just a violation of privacy but a fundamental attack on the trust that makes modern society function. The case became a cautionary tale about the dark potential of technology and the importance of vigilance in protecting personal privacy. For Sarah's family, the healing process was slow but steady. They eventually took another vacation, this time to a well-established hotel with rigorous security protocols. While they never fully recovered their innocent trust in the world, they found ways to rebuild their sense of safety and continue creating positive memories together. The experience had changed them, but it had also made them stronger and more aware of the importance of protecting not just their own privacy but that of others who might be vulnerable to similar violations. The story of the cabin became a warning to other travelers about the hidden dangers that could lurk behind seemingly innocent vacation rentals. Sarah began speaking at conferences about privacy rights and the psychological impact of surveillance violations, turning her trauma into advocacy for stronger protections for travelers and families. Her experience, while devastating, became a catalyst for change that helped protect countless others from similar violations. The mountains of North Carolina remained beautiful and peaceful, but for Sarah's family, they would forever be associated with the loss of innocence and the hard-learned lesson that safety and privacy are precious gifts that must be actively protected. The cabin was gone, but the memory of those 3 days would serve as a permanent reminder of the importance of vigilance and the courage required to fight back.